All right, so there is actually a lot of new big Nintendo Switch 2 news updates, even some leaks and rumors in this conversation as well, and we're going to get on the same page with all of it. We have to go over what I would consider to be some great news headlines floating around with confirmation of just how certain first-party Nintendo games, or one particular one that is around the launch window, will be performing in handheld mode, and it is fully utilizing Nintendo's upgraded display tech, fortunately, and this may be a good sign of things to come for other first-party Nintendo content going forward. We then also have some confirmation around the Bluetooth technology in Nintendo Switch, and it sounds like it will be a vast upgrade from the Switch 1, which is great news if you connect wireless headphones and don't want any latency or things like that. We have a detailed video to go over of the Nintendo Switch 2 dock from the Nintendo Today app, which shows you exactly all the angles of the dock and anything and everything you would want to see from that piece of hardware. I do want to highlight a big issue that's popped up online for many users. I did not know this was something that was entirely possible prior to this gaining traction online, but anyway, that newest Nintendo Switch system firmware update did definitely break one feature that people were absolutely utilizing up to this point in time, and I want to highlight it. We have some brand new game leaks. We also have some comments from CD Projekt Red on what type of edition Cyberpunk 2077 is for the Nintendo Switch 2 and whether or not that may be the console you want to pick it up on. And lastly, we're going to mention a rumor for fun that's really not a rumor, but I'm going to, talk about the likelihood of it happening or not, because this gained way more steam online than me or many others were expecting. So we'll get on the same page with all of this info. Before we do, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on your bell notification to join Sunbro Nation if you're new here. And if you are subscribed to this channel, you will automatically be entered into a giveaway for the Nintendo Switch 2 console that we will be revealing the winner after we cross the 90K subscribers mark, which is actually happening very quickly. So huge shout outs to you for all subscribing, and that enters you in for a cool giveaway to give back to the community to celebrate the launch of the Switch 2. Definitely hyped for it. So with that, I do want to first hop over to PC Guide, and you can see the following information outlined in this article that actually stems from that Nintendo of Japan magazine we flipped through for the Nintendo Switch 2, but translations have since been done, and you can actually see this new information for DK Bonanza, where it says Donkey Kong Bonanza confirmed to take full advantage of Nintendo Switch 2's improved resolution. Let's see how stable the 60 FPS experience turns out. Donkey Kong Bonanza will be among the Nintendo Switch 2 games releasing within the handheld's first launch window. Until now, we haven't had any clues about which Switch 2 games would take advantage of the handheld specifications, more specifically the large 7.9-inch LCD screen and maximum 1080p resolution and HDR support. Nintendo Japan recently released the digital version of its Nintendo Magazine 2025 special issue, and while most of the information focuses on the new system and isn't exactly new, on page 12 the company used Donkey Kong Bonanza to showcase the console's advancements, and it didn't take long to spot a small piece of text under the image confirming that the title will run at up to 1080p resolution, 60 FPS with HDR in handheld mode. Donkey Kong Bonanza is set for release on July 17th, and it's not common for launch titles to take full advantage of a new console, so this is definitely impressive. Still, we're yet to see how the 1080p 60 FPS performance holds up in actual tests. It's worth noting that the Switch 2 offers up to 120 Hz, more than Steam Deck, so there's still some headroom to target. That said, Donkey Kong Bonanza is set to arrive July 17th and will be priced at $69.99, whereas Nintendo Switch 2 console itself launches on June 5th. So the big takeaway for me is the fact that 1080p 60 is a reality in handheld play from a first-party Nintendo perspective, and obviously this game, while not the most visually demanding or impressive piece of software that's been out there, it still looks very nice. Definitely like an enhancement from what you saw, from the Mario Odyssey team in terms of visual fidelity and performance, and I do believe this is being developed by that Mario Odyssey team, at least in part. There's some reason to believe that, but considering this is a early launch window title and we're seeing Nintendo go for that, of course it says up to 1080p, up to 60 frames per second, so obviously with the destruction elements in this game, I'm sure we are going to have some frame rate dips and things like that. Hopefully that's where VRR comes into play and it's not super noticeable when things like that happen, but nonetheless, I do think that, this targeting that 1080p 60 FPS frame rate and resolution, it's a nice combination to see in a handheld console in the modern day. And while we don't have any confirmation of how this is going to run in docked play, you know it will be higher resolution, hopefully 4K 60, maybe 4K 30, just depending on what's going on. Or, you know, maybe it has that mid-range like variable refresh rate, maybe Cyberpunk 2077, which we'll talk about briefly later, which targets like 40 FPS in performance mode. You know, we'll have to see how some of these games land and what the big gap is in performance from dock play to handheld play. But you definitely like to see good news on the handheld front, like we certainly are for Donkey Kong right now. So that is definitely a game that will be on my day one pickup list, and we'll be covering it here on the channel. So make sure you're subscribed for that as well. But from there, we also have some really good news and confirmation. Probably one of the more important pieces of Switch 2 news to me personally, because I have had a long-standing complaint about the latency with Bluetooth on the Switch 1. I actually to this day still use wired headphones to plug into my Nintendo Switch console because I just notice the latency and delay if you hook up something like Apple AirPods or any other kind of wireless headset that you might want to use while gaming. Well, you can see that that's probably going to be a thing of the past over at my Nintendo News, where they have this article which outlines Switch 2 seemingly supports low latency Bluetooth audio if audio device supports Bluetooth 5.2. One thing people who play their Nintendo Switch system in handheld mode like to have handy is a pair of Bluetooth earphones such as AirPods or AirPods Pro. The experience isn't amazing on the current Nintendo Switch system, but it looks like that's set to improve with the upcoming release of Nintendo Switch 2. The Switch 2 seems to support Bluetooth 5.2, which should provide a better, more seamless connection with improved audio quality if you wish to use your system in handheld mode with Bluetooth headphones connected. Switch use Bluetooth 4.1. Like you mentioned, trying to use Bluetooth audio while docked can cause various audio problems because of the time slices of using it, plus your controllers, which are also connected via Bluetooth when docked, are being saturated, and there's a limited amount of bandwidth available. Starting with version 4.0, Bluetooth opted for low latency design. That can cut the power consumption by a lot. It also ended up having some shortcomings in max bandwidth and whatnot. It was still a big improvement overall over the prior version. With Switch 2, I believe the version is up to 5.2 according to the FCC filings, which is a substantial step up from 4.1, which when taking versions in between into account, version 4.2 to 5.0 and 5.1, etc., increases efficiency, bandwidth, packet size, range, and other things. 5.2 was a focus on improving the audio experience, particularly with introducing LE audio, which increases audio quality, lowers latency, and is more power efficient and utilizes less bandwidth than the existing SBC codec by using the newer LC3 codec. So all you have to know is that if you were somebody like me who kind of noticed when you were hooked up to your Switch 1 on Bluetooth audio that you would hit a button and there would be a slight delay and then the audio would come through, that should now be a thing of the past. Not to mention just weird interference problems and other issues with Bluetooth not staying connected even if you had it in your system memory. There was a lot of jankiness going on with Switch 1 Bluetooth. Like I said, it deterred me from ever actually using it as my primary audio option for the console. So very glad to see the confirmation that that is a thing of the past. And then I want to shift to a nice little video of the Switch 2 dock if you haven't seen it up close and in detail yet. Stealth 40K over on Twitter, shout outs to him, uploaded this video where it just kind of outlines the exact look at the up close of this thing in case if you haven't seen it from all angles or anything like that. Still the same kind of ports is intact with what the OLED dock offers. The two USB-A's on the front, USB-C for power in the back behind the casing, and then also an HDMI and a LAN port. We do not have that bonus USB-A like I believe was in the Switch original dock. They did remove that for the LAN port just like they did in the OLED dock, so it's essentially the same as that. It's quite a bit beefier than the regular dock. I actually have a mock-up unit of this sent over to me from an accessory company, not the actual Switch 2 dock, and I can't remove the back like you're seeing on screen there, but it's funny to see this now officially promoted from Nintendo, considering we were looking at like blurry leaked images of these things quite a while back and we couldn't make heads or tails of if it was 100% legit or not. Well, now we have that confirmation and Nintendo's promoting the dock themselves, and you know, space wise, you're going to notice the extra heft to it. The fan does kick up depending on if it detects that it has higher temperature, so you will have the fan running potentially louder or less loud in the dock, but even the two fans rumors from back in the day checked out in this thing. But I'll be curious to see how much the temperature impact really means to the Switch 2 at the end of the day from this dock, but I would imagine, the more fans, the better that you can have dissipating the heat around a console, especially whenever we're talking about some of the modern day games that are being developed to run on Switch 2 when in dock play with 4K resolutions and things like that happening. So, okay, this next thing is really going to be a bad news piece of information for just about anybody who was aware of and using this feature. I personally was not. I knew you could kind of like share your Nintendo Switch digital library of games, but I didn't know you could literally both play them simultaneously on like a primary console and a secondary console. And apparently that was a pretty common practice from certain people online, because it has been spotted that in the newest 20.0.0 system update, that is no longer available. So you can see VGC's write-up, which outlines Switch's new virtual game card system stops same game from being played online on two Switch consoles. Players with different accounts could previously play the same digital Switch game online together. Now, you can still kind of do this, but you can't do it online together. So we're just going to kick it up on the article here. So, however, players are now reporting that this new system prevents two users with their own Switch consoles from playing the same digital game online at the same time, something that was possible before. In the past, Switch games bought using a main player's primary console could be played on a other account signed into that console, including online. The main player could then sign into a secondary console and install the game there too. The idea was that if the main player signed into the secondary console and another family member used their own account on the primary console, both could play the main player's purchased digital game online at the same time. The change to virtual game cards no longer makes this possible because there are no longer primary or secondary consoles. Now digital games are treated like physical cartridges, meaning they can technically only be active on one system at a time. Now there is a workaround to this, and I think they actually outline it, but essentially the idea is if you are online initially and you boot up the game and you put it in airplane mode, you can kind of get around that and play the game on two different consoles, one on your primary and one on your secondary. But what you are not able to do anymore is obviously connect to each other online, because if you threw your console into airplane mode, it is no longer going to be able to connect to any kind of Nintendo Switch online connectivity to play online with another user. So, unfortunate feature drawback. I do like virtual game cards and the concept of it myself. I know the being like local with each other is kind of a drawback, but obviously I think that's Nintendo's I know you have to have them on your Nintendo Switch Online family account, but I think they're probably trying to stop people from advertising like large digital game libraries and signing up people on their online account, charging a fee and stuff like that. And it doesn't matter where you're at in the world. I think there could have been some better systems in place than what Nintendo came up with. But nonetheless, being able to share out a virtual game card with up to 3 other users on your Nintendo Switch Online family plan, not a bad deal. But if you were somebody that was previously using this kind of simultaneously digital game share that Nintendo did actually outline how to do in their own guides before, apparently, it is definitely a drawback, no way around that. So unfortunate for anybody that was taking advantage of that, because it's literally just not a thing anymore. But I don't think we're going to see Nintendo backtrack it. That's probably just the route that we're going from here. Okay, next up, a few quick fire pieces of information I want to get through. So at My Nintendo News, you can see Switch 2 version of Dragon Ball Sparking Zero has been rated in Saudi Arabia. So this is not an officially announced game for the Switch 2. It was leaked from Nash Weedle and many others online, and it's also kind of a no-brainer title to come over because Bandai Namco is definitely going to be showing a lot of support this console generation, and I do think that we should expect this game to come over, but now we just straight up have a rating for it out of Saudi Arabia, so I would expect this to pop up as an official announcement sometime soon, likely over the summertime or something like that. You then have this headline over from VGC, which says CD Projekt Red shares more Cyberpunk Switch 2 footage and says it's the best way to play it on the go. That is their exact words, and they do actually point out some like pretty cool additional things that they are utilizing because of the Joy-Cons and stuff like that, because it says in the video, it's also explained how the Switch 2 Joy-Con controllers can be used by the player to fight with katana swords. So there's some little nice enhancements to Cyberpunk 2077. This is a funny game for me because I bought it right at the launch window when it came out, like for the PS5, and it was running okay, but it was all the bugs and glitches and all the chaos with that game and lots of crashing and stuff. So it just deterred me from playing through it and ever going back to it. And now all these years later, with the DLC and obviously a much more stable build, I will likely check it out on the Nintendo Switch 2. In fact, I know I will because I pre-ordered it. So it is one of the few few fully on cartridge physical games as well, so that's how I opted to pick it up, and I'll be excited to see some of the enhancements that CD Projekt Red added in, and it does seem like with it being developed specifically for the Switch 2 in mind with this particular port, that will be the best way to experience the game in handheld play. Okay, the very last thing we're going to talk about briefly, just because of the massive amount of coverage it got online, is this Nintendo Switch 2 Stock Alerts fan account that spread this rumor, which the source is the problem with it. I'm all for putting out leaks and rumors that may or may not happen. If we know that there's some kind of source with at least a decent track record or some type of track record, well, you can see this post. Themes will be available from firmware version 2.0 onward for the Switch 2, possibly 2.1 or 2.2. They will be unlocked through platinum points and quests, NSO exclusivity, and some will be requiring payment via the eShop. No NSO required. Pick is concept only. Well, you might wonder where the source of this comes from, because it got picked up by a lot of websites and different things. Source, numerous comments have been made regarding black themes, suggesting that it will be requiring payment. However, that's clearly inaccurate. So I do believe that, yes, the source is actually just talk online, and somehow that turned into, on version 2.0 of the firmware of Switch 2 or onward, we would get themes added in. Now, I am for themes. I want to see them happen. I absolutely would spend money on certain themes just to have some element of customization for my Switch console again. But this is not the rumor that gives me any more hope that this will potentially be happening for Nintendo Switch 2. So while I do hope it will happen one day, and it very well may, I'm not holding my breath for the 2.0 firmware to be the actual reveal of themes, because I just don't think this holds any weight to it. But nonetheless, I know it's a very, very high demand, high requested thing from fans, and hopefully in the Nintendo Switch's generation, we will indeed see that come to pass. But let me know in the comments down below what you make of everything we talked about today. Donkey Kong Bonanza's performance in handheld play. Are you hopeful that many other Switch games will run in that 1080p 60 frames per second from a first-party Nintendo perspective in handheld play when they're all said and done? What do you think about the Bluetooth audio updates, the look of the Switch 2 dock? Were you somebody who is using that Switch 2 share feature where you could play a digital game on two different consoles at the same time, or are you largely unaffected? And are any of the leaked or rumored games and or features for Switch 2 exciting to you? And do you think if you had to just put your money on it, will we get customizable or dynamic, let's say, different themes than just a light and dark mode in Switch 2 during that console generation when it's all said and done? So make sure you share all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below before you leave, regardless if we agree or disagree. Also, make sure you like, subscribe, turn your notification bell. And with that, I've been Sunbro, you've been Nation. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.